Now, more pro-democracy protests are expected this weekend in Hong Kong after shopping malls closed early on Thursday and the city's metro, which has borne the brunt of the protests recently, shut 3 hours ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, the territory's Legislative Council is set to reconvene next week, and that's after a prolonged summer recess. Now, the government says it won't be taking any further measures to counter violent protests and rejected rumours that mainland Chinese security forces were involved in the city. Well, with me now is Global Affairs analyst Michael Bociurkiw. Now, Michael, you have just literally returned from Hong Kong late yesterday. You've been talking to both sides. What have they been telling you?
Well, the devastation from the few days of protests earlier in the week is mind-boggling. In the area I stayed in, for example, there were a lot of Chinese-linked banks and travel services that were completely demolished, even a Starbucks. Now, there is a lot of disruption still. As you mentioned, the MTR is closing early. And from talking to people, locals or expatriates, a lot of them see this as a tool by the government closing the MTR earlier as a de facto curfew. So protesters can't move as easily around as they did before.
That's right. There's a great deal of anger, as you say, and as you say, targeting those Chinese businesses as well, a lot of those banks. But what we're seeing is both sides, because this week we saw foreign firms trying to navigate the political crisis in Hong Kong. You saw Apple withdrawing an app that essentially allowed protesters to track where the police were.
Right.
You also had the NBA, the National Basketball Association, caught in a firestorm over a tweet that basically led to the games being taken off air in Beijing. Of course, a lot of partners in China ceasing to do business with the NBA. What does this all mean? It's a really fine line trying to appease Beijing, isn't it?
Sure. What it means is companies that fall on the wrong side of Beijing can be expected to be hit very, very hard. And looking at this a bit wider, I think that because of the void of U.S. involvement now in big arenas like China, China, I think, feels can hit back even harder. Now, it's got to be said, companies like Apple still have a responsibility to their customers and shareholders to do a sort of duty of care and not do everything that China says.
And obviously, we're seeing some sense of normalcy, I suppose, with the LegCo now reconvening next week after this huge summer recess. Of course, it's been a summer of great tumultuous disruption there, this violence showing no signs of abating. What will it take to stop?
That's the big question, the $1 million question. There's no end in sight at the moment, and at the moment there's no meaningful dialogue between the government and the protesters, so the government has resorted to bringing in emergency measures, the anti-mask law, and I haven't ruled out, and neither have others, possible curfews and even restrictions on the internet. I think what it'll take, Sharanjit, is maybe the involvement of some international neutral interlocutor to come in and mediate between the two sides in Beijing. Otherwise, this could go on for months and months and months.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming in and talking to us about it. Michael Bociurkiw, Global Affairs analyst.